Hi, friends. Welcome back to get this little beautiful heart centered. Welcome back to Slow Stitching Through the Mother Wound. I am so happy that you're back. It means that, um, that you're feeling positive about what I've offered so far and that you want to be a part of the next pieces, which means a lot to me. So thank you. I have to highlight that I have this t-shirt that I got recently, and this morning I just felt inspired to make the sleeves fringy. And I think that is just such a fun part of like a manifestation or result of all of the work I have done around just accepting my inner child and letting go of this, like healing this mother wound and this requirement to like be a certain way or be appropriate. Like just cutting up my shirt was so liberating and fun, and like going out into the world with fringe. Um, when, there may be some people would be like, whoa, you have like fringe on your shirt. It makes me very happy, and I have to share with you. So I quit caffeine a couple of years ago, and this afternoon I really was craving coffee, and I would never at this point drink a full regular coffee because I know my system would be wild. But I drank a decaf coffee and I feel like, wow, like I'm on top of the world. The caffeine is a very nice drug. So let's see if I'm able to sleep tonight. But let's take advantage of this high energy and enjoy some slow stitching together. Yeah, I think it's kind of hilarious, but fun and delightful. So I'm feeling pretty good. I'm also really jazzed because I am one of the things that as I've been going through this Bethany Webster book that I've been so loving is just this reminder that scarcity is not like being stingy with myself, or the word I was taught, which makes scarcity sound like morally superior, is frugal. Like I was really I mean my family of origin was not frugal, but my religious community, I will say not even my religious community, but the religious books and stories and information I was exposed to through evangelical Christianity, especially because I was super fascinated by the missions world and read a lot of stories about missionaries. So in there is a lot of culture that really celebrates being frugal. And I took it as morally superior to be frugal. And I still would say that I'm a person that like I love buying things used. I love just simple things. And I'm not like, I don't think I'm ever going to be a super materialistic person, but there was a lot that was going into that frugal mindset that was actually more about scarcity and more about me thinking that like I don't have any value and I can't spend any money on myself or enjoy nice things because I think a lot of it had to do with my own like feelings of inferiority, which are totally related to the patriarchy. So before we get too far, um, grab your fabric, whatever fabrics you're using, grab some thread, whatever thread that you're using, grab a needle, grab some scissors, get your cozy things, get your favorite drink, get your cozy clothes on or your fringy fun clothes on. Get your quiet space, your music set up. Go ahead and pause. I'll be here when you come back. Also, remember, I'm not a mental health professional. If any of this stuff feels really hard or heavy, please reach out to friends or crisis lines, your doctor, whatever is right for you, your therapist, to make sure that you're getting the support that you deserve. I am in therapy every week, and I journal and meditate, and I do tons of stuff to take care of myself and give myself. I go to support groups when I need to. So please take advantage of resources and don't try to do all of this alone or be a superhero, because that's also a message that the patriarchy has given us, that we can't ask for support and we need to be fine all of the time. Okay, my loves. So today we've gone through the personal mother wound. We're just doing this stuff and not going into the depth that the book gives. So I do recommend taking a look at the book or listening some of the podcasts that Bethany Webster speaks on. But we've talked a bit about the personal, like you and your interaction growing up with your mom or with your parent figure that was the closest, and how did that affect the way that you see yourself in the world. So I have, since we were last together, I've finished up putting some stitches in here, and I've sewn on a ruffle that was made out of some fabric from my great grandmother's apron that she made. So that's feeling special. And today we are talking about culture. So I've gotten some yellow embroidery thread that I'm going to work with today. Split it in half, so there's just 3 strands. Before I get too deep into the information, I'm going to go ahead and cut out some fabrics. I really was loving this. And I've got this little, from Swanson's Fabrics, this little embroidered thing that I'd like to use. Culture. So I'm just doing what I feel like is pretty on these. I'm not worrying too much about, I'm going to use some of, I don't know, maybe I'll use, this is the other apron from my great grandma. What I used was the sash because I had a hard time cutting up the full apron. At some point I'll let myself, but that made me a little nervous. So I think I'll use some of that again for the for a little ruffly something. I'm gonna give myself, well, I'll wait on that. Do that at the end. Let's see what else fabric I have here. This one's a fun stripey. So I'm gonna cut myself out another heart. I'm just gonna give myself some squares to start building. I love this batik. Definitely going to use plenty of this. And so where I want to start today is with the just the really clear statement that, like, what can happen when we're talking about our experiences with systems of oppression is that we can start to feel really bitter and like it's not fair and like we're victims and like there's this big bad enemy that we need to fight, right? And there's an element of that that makes sense, right? It is important to validate for ourselves that, yeah, this is not cool, that this is the system that we've inherited. But if we stay there, we can get stuck, right? And that's not something that I want for us. Just gonna cut this edge off because I really like how this looks. And I don't want to cut it into that. So I have a metaphor that I think is helpful for me. And this is that let's say you're renting an apartment, okay? You come into the apartment and you've rented it, you've paid your first and last month deposit, and you're moving in and you're, excited about getting a new place, and you're like, getting geared up, bringing your stuff in, and you look and the apartment is just nasty, okay? It is like filthy. I'll give you a real life example that one time I rented an apartment, and when we got in there, oh my word, there was literally shrimp shells in a drawer. I do not know what was happening in that person's world, but there were shrimp shells in the drawer, filling up a drawer. Oh my word. So that was disgusting. Okay, so you show up, you've paid your money, and this is the state of this apartment that you've rented. Now, here are your options. You should get mad, right? That makes sense. Not should. I hate the word should. But it would be completely appropriate to feel angry, right? And to say, what the actual hell, right? And so that makes total sense. Okay. Now, if you got angry and you just spent the next year living in this gross shrimp shell place and talking to everyone who came over about how disturbing it was that you found it this way, how gross these people were who left it that way, how upset you are, right? If you spent the next year like that, who's that going to help, right? You're going to be miserable. You're going to have this gross place to live in. And no, you would never do that, right? So this is, tempting for us to be like, okay, we've literally inherited this. We didn't create the patriarchy, right? We didn't create white supremacy and classism and all of these things. We inherited them. And that can feel really frustrating. However, we're not saying that you have to say, okay, it was all my fault. We're saying, now that you know what you're working with, what are you going to do about it? Right? Does it make sense for you to live in this nasty situation? Or do you want to consider just realizing, okay, this is what I've got, and I'm going to clean it up as best I can, right? Because I don't want to stay stuck in this situation. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. So this is what we're saying. We're saying, yes, this is not cool. It's not fair. It's a major bummer that we've inherited the patriarchy, okay? And all of the ways that it has affected us. It's not cool. I'm not happy about it, okay? And now that we know where we're at with it, what can we do to come from a place of power and not victimhood and say, okay, yes, it is a bummer. And where can we feel the power that comes with realizing that we are adults and we do have, most of us, I'm not talking about people who are in situations where politically they don't have the power to oppose the patriarchy, or in situations of abuse where people don't have the option. It's not safe to go against the oppression and dominance that they're experiencing. So, of course, in those situations, that's a totally different scenario. But for a lot of us, and probably those of us who have access to something like this, we do have an element of control. I lost my needle, but we're just going to go with this one. Hopefully it'll take all three of these. Okay, so we're not talking about people who don't have, who it's not realistic for, but we're talking about those of us who do have either a supportive partner and political rights, or who are single and have the capacity to financially support yourself. Okay. So I want to be real clear about that. I am not talking about people who are politically or because of domestic violence in a place where they can't take care of themselves. Okay. Whew. Okay. So it's this blame versus responsibility. I want to blame and victimhood versus validation and taking responsibility as an adult. Okay. That we're considering shifting. All right. So let's look at culturally, what are the rules of patriarchy? Okay, I'm going to read through these as we stitch a little bit. I'm just going to do a straight stitch. And let's see if I can get something to hold my page open here. Okay, so foundation of patriarchy, right, is prioritizing men over women, children, queer folks, right? Domination and power. So this is the message that we get that has to do with, I am not safe unless I follow the rules, right? Normalizing the suppression of feelings. So this is one of the ones that really harms everyone, right? People who are identified as men, they are put in the same group as having to suppress feelings, just like the rest of us. Okay, this was the example last time. Remember how I said, when I try to go through like this, it's really hard to get the needle through. So that is my habit, but I am going to, because we are not in a rush and because I want to take care of my little elbows, which are sore lately from all this sewing, I'm going to go up and pull through, which doesn't create any stress in my elbow, down and pull through. Okay, so if you're having stress in your elbows or you're finding that the stitching is painful for any other part of your body, consider this, because there is totally a difference in the resistance if I do this versus doing the, grab it thing, right? Okay. Normalizing the suppression of feelings, telling kids, you're okay, stop crying, right? Don't cry, don't cry. Okay. Or that's one end of the spectrum. To the other, I'll give you a reason to cry, which I know a lot of us has heard. Okay, viewing the expression of feelings as inherently weak or bad. Again, same thing. This is the smile, chin up, always be happy, right? It's not healthy for us because it's not authentic. And we know we're saying no to ourselves, and that wears you down, right? Feeling shame for having needs. This is a big one. Oh, friends, by the way, did you notice my new beautiful, beautiful, beautiful painting? This is by an artist who goes by Risa Bobesa, Reesa Bobeesa. Phenomenal artist. Both of these actually are by that artist. But this is self-love. You see how it's the same person and they're hugging themselves. It's so good for my soul. So I put it right there so that I could see it all the time and you can see it all the time. Okay. Shame for having needs. Shame for resting or slowing down. How many of you, raise your hand with me, if you watched a mom who never sat down? Literally. There was never unless I guess the only time was sometimes if we were like watching a show together, but every moment, tidying something, going to get something, I find myself doing that. Do you? And that was part of my, taking back my life a year or so ago when I said, I'm going to sit down with my feet up for 10 minutes. And I tell you, it felt so scary and so disruptive because my whole nervous system and inner child knew that was so dangerous and against the rules, right? Shame for resting or slowing down. Needing to produce to feel valued. That one affects everyone, including, people who are assigned male at birth or socialized as men. So much pressure to produce, so much pressure to achieve, right? Violation of boundaries, feeling like it's mean to say no, right? Or someone's not going to like you unless you say yes. So getting relationships by saying yes, even when you don't want to. Sense of scarcity of money, time, love, energy. All of those. Scarcity of money, just talked about it. Scarcity of time. It's like we're better moms or like better people. If people ask us how we're doing, we say, oh, so busy, never enough time, right? It's like heroic or something, which it's like, oh my gosh, so sad. Time, love, scarcity of love, scarcity of energy. Everybody, you ask them how they're doing, so exhausted, so tired, right? Objectification, not seeing people as people. I think this really plays out in the the way that we are treated as workers, especially. Obedience and compliance are demanded. Viewing violence as powerful, like it's like admirable, right? We watch all these awful violent shows where people are shooting each other and they're so like heroes, right? Admiring a lack of empathy. Empathy is seen as a weakness. Yep, sure have experienced that I've been told that a million times, right? Stop being so sensitive. Why are you caring about everybody? We need to do this like blame and judge and criticize. So much criticism being celebrated and empathy being weak. I sure have experienced that. Romanticizing, eroticizing the dynamics of domination and submission. Ooh, yeah, yeah. Ooh, that one's like too much for me to take on in this moment. But boy, have I seen that play out on TV and in people's relationships. Yeah, that's a biggie. Just shift this little guy. Isn't that a pretty flower on this fabric? Looking down upon whatever is perceived as feminine. Yeah, my kid and I were just talking about that anytime he does something that someone thinks is feminine, he's just mocked, belittled, right? Clothing, friendship choices, mannerisms. So this is really dangerous. This is, all of patriarchy is bad for every person, regardless of gender identity. But some of them, you can really see how they equally affect both people assigned male at birth and people assigned female at birth. Looking down, yeah, considering men as the default human being. So like being a man is normal. So the like I can call everybody, hey guys, right? Did you ever notice that? We say, hey guys. Some neighbor kids playing outside. Hey guys is like a everybody. Or you can especially see this in languages where gender is marked on the words. So like ellos in Spanish means a group of with a masculine ending. So it's like, hey guys. If you are a person who says hey guys a lot and you're in the South, you can use y'all. Hey y'all is very inclusive. Or if you're not, you can say hey friends, right? Hey everyone. Yeah. Holding the racist belief that white is right. So yeah, patriarchy and white supremacy usually go hand in hand. I think there's probably no exception to that. And holding the belief that heterosexuality, which means like a man with a woman, is the norm and ideal. So anything that's anti-queer or anti-people of color is often together with patriarchy, and patriarchy reinforces both racism and heteronormativity or homophobia and transphobia. And that's the like any idea that like this is normal and normal means good, right? Okay, so that, let me see if that's the end of this list. Yeah, woo, that's a lot. So let's take just 2 or 3 minutes and see what's happening in your body and in your heart after hearing this really intense list of how patriarchy plays out. Pause if you want to go splash some water on your face or have something to drink or just take a little walk. Okay, I'm just going to stitch for a minute. I'm loving you so much. right. So now we're going to look at how the patriarchy defines expectation of women. And for this, I'm going to just remind us that it's not just women, it's all people who are assigned female at birth, and all people who are perceived as femmes, or who take the femme role in a relationship. So in a lot of queer relationships, there's often a person who is expected to take on the roles of the more feminine roles of caregiver, cooker, person who cooks, person who cleans. So this includes everybody who is in that category and not just women. Okay. Relinquish personal ambition to care for their families. The place where you really see this is in the obviously in relationships when one person is assumed to do more of the care labor, but you also see this in the workplace when people say, I don't want to hire someone who is the femme person in a family system because they're gonna bail on work, or they're not going to show up for work as much. Or if in interviews when someone says like, oh, are you thinking about starting a family soon, to someone who's like women identified or assigned female at birth, or has the more femme role in a relationship, assuming that like you would never ask a man in an interview like, oh, are you going to have kids at some point? Then I don't want to hire you, because that's assumed that having kids won't impact a man, because a man is not going to have to do any of the care work, right? Deplete themselves to support their families and raise children. Pretty self-explanatory. Be the primary caretakers of the household. So I live in a super, super progressive place, and without fail, the people who play that femme role or are women identified in relationships, even people who have super intense jobs, PhDs, and we're in like one of the most liberal places, they're still the one who does all the cooking and cleaning in a house and childcare and manages everybody's, doctor's appointments and play dates and soccer practices. I've seen this a million times. It's bizarre. I mean, it makes sense. We're all stuck in this system because we don't know about it. It's hard to change something until you understand it. So that's part of what we're doing here together. Thank you. Constantly serve others and others' needs while not attending to their own. So this assumption that I'm here to serve, I don't exist as a person, I don't have needs, I can't have needs, right? Handle everything with ease 100% of the time, have well-behaved children, and maintain a high standard of beauty, a sex drive, a successful career, and a solid marriage. Oy. All right, so that's again a lot, and this can bring up feelings of it's not fair, I'm a victim, powerlessness, what am I supposed to do? How am I ever get out of this? I hate everybody, right? So let's take a deep breath and remember the goal of acknowledging this is to validate yourself that this has not all just come up because you're not doing good enough or you need to work harder, that this is this is systemic oppression, and it's made to put the burden on you and make you question yourself. So we're validating it not to make us feel hopeless, but to tell ourselves, this is not about me. It's not because I'm doing a bad job. I'm going to see what's going on so that I can begin to interact with it differently and disengage from it, right? In order to empower myself and to set the stage for me to be able to interact with the world in a more empowering way for others. Okay. So it's worth it. So let's take a moment. I just even want to like shake it out a little bit of our bodies. Let's take a deep breath. We see really clearly what's been happening. Let's shake it out with your hands. Okay, this is not just me This is a system that I did not create. There are shrimp shells in the drawer and it's disgusting, but now I am going to clean it out. I'm going to clean up my environment. I'm going to ask for help. I'm not going to try to do this alone. We're here together. Okay. All right. Ooh, big stretch. All right. So let's look at the next piece. Okay. Yes. So how do we get out of this? One of the biggest ways that we start to get ourselves out of this is through acknowledging it, like I said, and releasing in the day-to-day little tiny moments, taking on this role as the cleaning ladies and caregivers of the culture, right? To say, hey, I see what's happening. I see that I'm being asked to do emotional labor for everyone, right? Because we don't allow men to have any feelings, right? Because we don't allow anyone to have any feelings. We're having to react and demonstrate the emotion for everyone. And this is what reinforces this codependency, right? And how so many men will say, the only place I can have my feelings is with my wife, right? And so we carry the emotions of everybody else and try to make everyone happy. This codependency is so tempting to stay in. But when like we talked about the no mud, no lotus, when we start to let go of this and let other people hold their own responsibility to deal with their own pain, we allow for them actually to heal. So it's a gift, even though they're probably going to say, you're abandoning me, you're a bad person, right? Playing out the role of the good wife or mother, right, is we've put this morality upon it that means we're good or we're being nice, but really it's holding everyone back. Okay. And so releasing this is gonna feel like dangerous. It's gonna feel like people are, gonna say you're being selfish, you're being mean. But what we're doing, it just like how it's difficult to start to pick apart racism and acknowledge, whoa, racism has played a really big role in our lives and we need to start to look at it, right? It's painful and uncomfortable. Just like if you get an infection, right? What do you have to do? You have to scrub that stuff out. And that hurts, right? You can't get rid of an infection without opening it up, taking a look, scrubbing out that pus, right? Squeezing out that pus. And it is super painful and it's super gross. And it might even get worse before it gets better. But the gift is then it can heal. So that's what we're doing. We're saying, okay, we're not going to let this drawer stay full of shrimp shells. We're going to get our gloves on. We're going to call a friend, or we're going to, if we have the resources, we're going to pay for someone to come start to clean this out. And we're going to say, okay, I didn't do it. It's not my fault, but I don't have to live this way. Okay. So assertiveness, mentioned this before. Assertiveness is that honest, clear, not passive aggressive, not trying to manipulate, taking responsibility for yourself and leaving the responsibility of others in their lap. This is the way to shift the dynamic and take responsibility, and to start to live not in a hierarchy, which is patriarchy, and shift into egalitarianism. So I didn't really understand completely what these two are. So let me talk for a minute about hierarchy versus egalitarian. So patriarchy is a hierarchy, right? Men are higher than women and children and queer people. Egalitarian means, let me just read the egalitarian is where Okay, sorry, I lost my place here. Egalitarian is where things are more on even par with each other. So someone doesn't have more power and the other person has less power. Okay. And so this is what we can start to show up in our world, even if our systems are continuing to be patriarchal or hierarchical, we can start to model egalitarianism and in our own interactions. And we can start to expect it and ask for it when people are interacting with us. Okay. And what's really cool about starting to move away from the hierarchy of patriarchy and move towards egalitarian is actually many communities, BIPOC or Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, cultural heritage is more egalitarian. So what's going to happen when you start to move away from this is you're also going to be moving away from white supremacy, which is a fabulous bonus, right? And something we should all really be paying attention to. Okay, so in a hierarchy, we have titles. So you don't talk to someone by just, their casual name. You say, oh, sir or doctor or Mr., right? Education is like institutional education is really important and considered better or more valuable. Leaders and authority figures give directions and instructions, and people who are under them wait before acting until they're given instructions. Senior members have like special, like they sit at the front of the table, they have a special seat or a place, or they enter first or go first. People only interact with others who have their similar status, right? So like, we only hang out with people of a similar socioeconomic status, or you don't have get-togethers with your gardener and your housekeeper. You separate according to status. Family names, so like having a family name of someone who's powerful is valued. Dressing according to social standards, like with certain brand names or jewelry or certain styles of clothing, or how much your clothing costs is considered important. You have to interact with people in terms of greetings in like a more serious way. Like you wouldn't say hey to someone of like higher status than you. You have to be more serious or formal in your greetings. Okay, so that's all hierarchy. We're all familiar with that because we've been operating off of it, right? Now, egalitarian, to contrast that, let me just trim this little guy right here. I don't like the angle of that. Okay. Now, this piece, humanitarian, egalitarian, is not, I don't know if it's in the book, but this is something that I feel like lines up nicely with this. So this is just me sharing this part. And I got this from online, the definitions and descriptions of hierarchy versus egalitarian. Okay. In an egalitarian culture, you don't have to use titles. You can just use first names. Education is valuable, but it's not necessary. So you don't have to have it to be valued or respected. Rights and opportunities are equal and put into the law. So the law states that people are to be treated equal. You can socialize with anyone. It doesn't matter what the status is. A doctor could hang out with someone who just is a cashier, right? There's no like social status that would make it so that you wouldn't be friends or close. Status and authority are usually gained through actions and merit rather than family position, age, or socioeconomic status. People tend to frown on boastfulness. Managers tend to be inclusive and act as coaches. Teamwork is common. Physical appearance and manner of dress, so your clothing style, is not really what people figure out your status from. People freely take responsibilities for tasks and are encouraged to take initiative. So let's just take a moment and think about what is a way that you can start to have more have your actions reflect assertiveness or your own inherent value or egalitarianism rather than patriarchy or submission. So what's like one or two things that you can think of that you could do in your day-to-day to show up with more of to reflect a value that all people are valuable regardless of hierarchy or patriarchy or race, class, gender identity, sexual orientation, ability, right? We haven't really mentioned ability, but ableism falls right into all this stuff. Patriarchy also says the stronger and healthier and abler your body is, the better you are, right? So if you have any type of physical difference or weakness or disability, it's another piece of patriarchy that says you're not as valuable. So let's take a minute and think about one or two ways in your day-to-day without making major changes that you could start bringing more egalitarian perspective or assertiveness into your life. Okay, let's just stitch for a minute. Okay, so what did you come up with? This is not change the world, completely rehaul the system kind of thinking. What we're thinking about is just what is one small way that you can establish for yourself that you are not less than, and that you are not, your job is not, you didn't come here to this planet to serve, right? What is one small way that you can begin to show yourself that and start to shift that deep training that you've received? Some things that came to mind for me, I'm a single parent, so there's no one to take turns doing the dishes or cooking or housework with. It's all me, right? but my kiddo is 11 and as big and as strong as me. So even though it is painful, and even though I don't want to give him the role of a parent, I have started, not every night, but every once in a while saying, hey, why don't you take a break from playing and come help me get dinner ready or do some dishes with me, right? And that is little ways to start to show him that he's capable as a part of the family, and that it's not just the mom that does all of the work, right? Some other ways are for my regular job, I'm a speech pathologist and I work as an independent contractor. So basically, the company I contract with reaches out to me and says, "Hey, we have this school site that needs A, B, or C, and can you do it?" And I've been working for them for about 11 years, and in that time, I have always said yes to every single thing that's been asked of me. I was scared that if I said no, they would think that I, um, wasn't a good worker or didn't care, or that they would give the work to someone else and then there wouldn't be enough to go around, that scarcity. I lost my little yellow thread. Let me just find it. So last week, I was wrapping up the school year. The schools closed last week, and there were a few last minute, like, can you do this tomorrow? Or can you do this in one day requests? And at first, I just knee-jerk reaction, stayed in my habit and said, yes, of course, even though it would have been quite difficult for me to accomplish that in such a short time frame. And then I was like, I sent the email saying, sure. And then I had a moment of realizing I don't really want to do this. And I think it's going to be really challenging. And there's no real need for me to do this. Like, it's not an emergency. No one's going to get hurt. My finances aren't going to be impacted in any sort of serious way if I don't do this one thing. Right. So I emailed my supervisor back and said, hey, actually, I was wrong. I'm not going to be able to take this on. And in the moment that it took for me to process that and write her back, she had already written the school site and introduced me and said, like, great, thank you so much. And I was like, oh my gosh. So then I had to write a second email that said, actually, our emails crossed at the same time. I had emailed back to say my apologies, but it actually doesn't make sense for me to take this on. And she emailed back and said, oh, well, I had said I can't meet your timeline. And she emailed back and said, oh, okay, if we can give you an extra week, can you do it? And I thought, oh, you know what? I was not being 100% authentic. The truth was, I didn't want to do it. Not that I couldn't meet the timeline, and I was trying to make it sound a little bit better so that I wasn't sounding bratty, even though assertive is not bratty. Okay. Saying no. How many times have you heard this, that no is a complete sentence, right? But I always feel like there has to be a good enough reason, or it has to be because I physically can't. I can't just say I don't want to, right? So I had to be really brave and take a deep breath and write her back and say, actually, I just need to be done for the year. And I felt nervous. But do you know what she wrote back? Great, have a super summer. We'll do it in the fall. It was no big deal. And how many times do we invent in our head that something's going to be a super big deal and it's not? So again, I'm not saying, revolutionize your whole life. I'm just saying consider taking small steps that will communicate, if nothing else, to your own little sense of self. You are not here to serve. That is not why you're here. You're here actually. I mean, we don't know why we're here, right? But it doesn't make sense that some of us are here to serve and some of us are here to dominate, right? that just doesn't make sense to me, even though I know that Christianity has come up with that narrative as a way to control us. If you're interested in digging more deeply into the ways that Christianity as a religion have twisted history and the actual words of the Bible to enforce patriarchy, check out this book by Sue Monk Kidd. You might know her. She wrote that book that was so great and popular, The Secret Life of Bees. Check out her book, which is called Dance of the Dissident Daughter. She did some amazing research into the history of Christianity and the history of like all basically spiritual traditions around the divine feminine and like the treatment of women and the patriarchy. And it is wild, you all. It is really incredible. I was like underlining every word and Googling every single thing she said because I was just so blown away. Like, I could not believe it because, I grew up being told, like, this is gospel truth. This is God's word. This is what God thinks. And so much of it was just invented as a way to control people's lives, right? So check that out if you're interested. And remember that all of this, it's big and hard and sad. And when we have things that are big and hard and sad, we deserve to grieve, right? So if you have grief come up around this, your stitching is a great place to put that grief. And also talking with friends, journaling, reaching out to your doctor or mental health provider, counselor, therapist, calling a crisis line if that feels like it would be helpful, right? 12-step groups are a cool place. If you've ever explored them, there's lots that you don't have to be an alcoholic or be a family member of alcoholic. There's Codependence Anonymous. There's all sorts of 12-step groups, and you can just come and people will listen to you. It is the wildest experience. They will just listen to you, talk about your feelings, and that can be a really great starting point. So take really good care of yourself. Remember that this is not your fault. You're not in trouble. You're not to blame. And also, even though it is not our fault and it's not fair, it is what it is. All right. It's this apartment that we've just moved into. And what can we do little by little to make it a nice place for us to live? Okay. So give yourself a hug. Remember that you are really valuable and precious. And thank you for being here and doing this work with us. And the next piece that we're going to look at that is my favorite is the spiritual component of the mother wound. Okay. And how wild it is. And that's a lot that I learned from that Dance of the Dissident Daughter book. How wild it is that this concept of God as father that was fused with patriarchy has impacted so many humans to feel disconnected from their own divinity and their right to have a relationship with divinity. This is huge to me. So I can't wait to talk about it with you. I love you so much, and I'm sending you so much love, and I can't wait to see you again soon. Okay.